Hello and welcome to Men in Progress, the podcast of United Methodist Men of Trietsch here in Flower Mound, Texas. We're part of the Life Plus God podcast series from Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church. We drop a new podcast every Tuesday, and we appreciate you listening to this episode of Men in Progress. So I'm your host, Dave Casey, and if you've listened to us before, you know that we're just a bunch of guys that are trying to be better men and live better lives in our walk with God, with our families, and each other. In this episode of Men in Progress, we're discussing something, for some of them it's easy, and for some of us it's pretty hard, and that's how to live your faith at work. Not every office environment is what we'd call faith-friendly. That's not to say that they're necessarily bad, just as sometimes being demonstrative with your faith at work can be tricky. And how will it make other people feel? Will they judge me? How will it affect the way I'm viewed in my company and among my colleagues? Joining me to discuss this whole topic of faith at work are three of our brothers from Trietsch, Alan Carruth, Eddy Evans, and Chuck Moseley. So guys, welcome to Men in Progress.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Glad
Thanks,
to be here.
Good guys, good to have you guys here. So right out of the gate, I've got a question for y'all, and it's, in your experience, has it been hard to live out your faith at work? And since I'm looking at Chuck, I'm going to have him go first.
Okay, I've thought about this. For the last 20 years, I've worked for a London-based firm, and I'm remote. And being a London-based firm, we are truly global in nature, and there's a lot of religions, types of people. There's a lot of things that I've learned over 20 years. It's been very good for me personally, but it makes it a little bit more difficult to live out your faith at work, other than try to put Jesus on display, offer to pray for people, these types of things, and that's what I do.
So the way you have your office decorated doesn't have an effect on these guys.
And standing up during a conference call isn't always a good idea.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, yeah, because you got video. You're doing video a lot, right? Yeah. So I guess you could have that giant, crucifix behind you.
I do have my Emmaus cross hanging behind me, and every now and then it prompts hey, I just noticed something in the background.
Yeah.
I invite and sort of solicit those questions. I wish I got more of them.
Yeah. So, Alan, yours is a little different, and we'll go back to your days as an anesthesiologist. I could almost say that straight. That's amazing. Uh-huh. But how did you live out your faith at work?
Well, it wasn't there right at the beginning because I was more interested in making my way and impressing people and making a good living and trying to keep all the surgeons and the nurses and the employees happy and dealing with administrative stuff. So even though I was going to church and all that kind of stuff, I will admit that wasn't top priority for me to begin with.
Nothing overt, obviously.
And then as some people have probably said many times, I went on the walk to Emmaus, and that was a transforming event that brought God and Jesus to the forefront. It did change my attitude and it changed my behavior, but was I overtly trying to show people I was a Christian? That came slowly.
Okay.
That came slowly.
Eddy, how about you?
I think I would have to say it was kind of the same way. I've been in sales my whole career, and typically that is...
there's three things you're not supposed to talk about in sales. Right. That's what I understand. We end up talking about all three of them every time, too.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of entertaining. So a lot of what I guess I did on the front side of my career was just how we handled the entertainment side of taking customers out and doing different things like that, right? And that's something we would try to do with the conscience, let's just say, I guess. And then as these companies change and grow, though, I will say there's been a lot of introduction to charity style work, and the companies now have at least the bigger public companies that I work for now, they have times where they say, okay, you get 4 hours a month to do charity. And then, then those conversations come up. So as you do your charity, if it's, religious based or faith based, then you start to share those pieces. So that part becomes a little bit easier.
Almost like an officially sanctioned opportunity to share your faith.
But I do think it's odd as, diversity, equity, and inclusion grows and grows. It's still something that's not necessarily let's talk about it, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You can have your thing, but not necessarily talk about it. I will say though that Dr. Carruth has prayed with me and my wife before she went into a surgery one time before. So
same with my son.
He has made the change and has done it well. So
yeah, he came over with us. It wasn't even his case. He came over and prayed with us. So that was a nice thing. It was very reassuring. Well, if you've had them, have there been any particular barriers that you've run into, Alan? If there's anything that's popped up that the hospital says, "Hey, you can't do this," or anything along the way?
I think medicine's a unique field that really is not ever broached. Some people will feel, and I was uncomfortable first time. I was prompted by a friend at church, just kind of overheard, said, "Oh, Alan took care of you. Did you ask him to pray for you?" And that never even crossed my mind at the time. I had seen another surgeon friend do that, but was I? Well, of course I was qualified. That was pretty silly. So you just have to decide to give God a chance. And, with trepidation, you go in and you do it, and then you do it again, and you do it again. And suddenly after you've done it a few hundred times, you're going, wow, this is cool. Nobody's questioning me. And people start looking at you and treating you differently.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So Chuck, you work for a big international company. Are there any official employee handbook barriers to
Well, if there is, Dave, I've probably broached them, and consciously or otherwise.
Seniority has its privilege, I guess.
Well, I'm just not. I think it's one of those things that I feel strongly about my faith, just like the others feel strongly about theirs. But I think a good litmus test for me has been offering to pray for someone and just watching their reaction. You can
cool.
judge if the reaction is hey, thank you, I need that, or we need that. But if I've also seen it been met with just kind of cold indifference.
Yeah.
And so that for me, that makes me want to then come back at them again.
Yeah, really. Well, I had an interesting experience last Friday. We were at lunch with a prospective customer. We had dealt with them over the phone a couple times, never really had met face to face. First time, we're at lunch, and we just got, I was with a buddy of mine, and we just got a feel from him. I mean, there was nothing specific, nothing he said, but we waited till the food came, and my business partner goes, "Hey, do you think we ought to pray?" And I said, "Well, I'd be glad to pray." And we turned to him, and he says, "Well, I was waiting for you guys to say that." So, I mean, it was one of those deals that we guessed right, about our intuition of what he was about. So, Eddy, can you think of any specific example where faith has played a big role for you in your work or in your job?
Well, me personally, I think there was one point in my career when I was selling toys, and there was a guy on our team, and he was just a great guy. In fact, I worked for Hasbro, and he won Hasbro Man of the Year, and he was a person who he just did everything.
Sure.
And as he started to work through some of his I guess the charities that he would work for, he was really big with Angel Flight, I think is what it's called, and some stuff like that. He started to bring people in, and that was an easy way for me to kind of step in, and I was helping him on certain things, and then it just, like you say, it kind of becomes known that that's what you do, or that's who you are. And so it actually was a good thing, because it kind of helped a team that we were on, a group of people kind of come together, and for a while I think we were sort of seen as one of the best teams in the company because we got along so well. And I think that faith was a part of the base.
Yeah, that's a great kind of intro. Yeah, that's a super way to do that. So well, this will be a good one for Chuck. This is a great question. So would you say faith has personally affected you in how you do your job?
Dave, I would say that, yes. But I would say that especially over the last 10, 15 years. The walk to Emmaus played a big role in that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But I think having one of the things I've always done that I didn't realize was such a valuable Christian tool, and that's investing in people. I want to know about who I work with.
Yeah.
I want to know about them. I forget work for a moment. I want to know what you do, what makes you happy, what's your family like, and people tend to respond to that.
Yeah.
So I don't do it as a sales tactic. I do it because I'm genuinely interested.
Sure.
And there is the opportunity to pray for them or to be happy for them or these types of things. And every now and then they'll ask me about me.
Well, when you let them get a word in edgewise.
Yeah, not so much, but
Yeah.
I really found that investing in people is a good thing, and it pays dividends. And that's when it seems easier to get. Then they might approach you. Hey, I just couldn't help but notice you're a Christian, aren't you? And man, what a great question to have that.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess that could be a two-edged sword, though. Couldn't it?
Yeah. Well, that cross in the background probably helps.
Well, yes. I'm hoping they're not asking because man, you're a long way from it, buddy.
Yeah, I was shocked to find out that you're a Christian. So Alan, have you looked for guidance? And again, I'll go back to when you were actively working, because I know your job now is really a faith-based job. You're teaching Sunday school. You're teaching Bible lessons to guys that are in a tight situation. But did you look for guidance when you were doing your job in the Bible specifically?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It took me a while, but it was more than gaining knowledge about who God was or what Jesus did. It was allowing the words to transform whom I was so that it would allow me to feel the presence of God as I was doing whatever I was called to do. I could not, it came to the point I would tell people, I cannot do my job without the presence of God. So
That's great.
that is why I said, let's invite God to this party so that everything goes well. And I was so grateful that so many people, I would ask them, can I pray for you? Before I gave them the sedative, of course, they would thank me on the way back to the operating room, but I doubt they remembered what they said. But absolutely, it became it was like, when it says, you're doing it when you're achieving what your goal is, when you actually start to live without thinking about it, the life that God has called you to live.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, even if I was an atheist or an agnostic, and you asked me that question, and I'm laying there on the gurney, I say, hey, it couldn't hurt. I mean, that would be my answer.
Play the odds.
Yeah, no kidding. So, Eddy, have you ever found yourself praying about work?
I would say that more along the lines, though, of maybe keeping myself centered. That's usually what I use prayer for at work, right? When stuff gets busy or things are hectic, or even sometimes you just don't agree with what you're being asked to do. Lots of times I'll say that. I'm like, look, I don't agree with this, but you guys tell me what you want to do, and I'll go do it.
Yeah.
I'm the sales guy. I'm not in charge, but I'll march to whatever drum you tell me to. And so sometimes when I just feel like it's ridiculous, or the ask is weird, or we're making a deal or doing something for the wrong reasons, to show dollar volume or something, I just use it to keep myself centered. So it's not maybe necessarily a way of like I need help with the quarter, or I need help with this, but it's like I just to try to keep myself back
just
to
keep your keep your brain going the right direction. Do that. Chuck, you mentioned kind of the multinational, multi-faith, multicultural kind of environment that you're in. So have you seen, and this may be hard to do over video, I don't know, have you seen hints of faith from your coworkers?
Yes, in some of my travels before COVID, I spent a lot of time overseas and in other countries with people from. We all travel; it's just a culture, and I did get to. I learned about the Muslim faith a bit. Okay, and just how seriously they take that, but also how incredibly generous they were to me when I didn't understand and said something that was completely irresponsible. Which is very much like me. But I've never found it to be a barrier to any discussion. But to be fair, we don't sit around and talk religion because I think everyone is so astutely aware that there could be differences. So we touch on it and we move on.
Yeah, it's helpful to have a guide for that. I had the opportunity to go to Japan for our honeymoon. And it was a Japanese company that we were working with, and we had won this trip. So I parlayed a sales reward trip into my honeymoon, which is what everybody should do, right?
Nice.
I told the honey it's going to be wonderful and romantic and a couple of plant tours. But other than that, But it was interesting because the folks that I dealt with here in the U.S. that were Japanese spent some time with me kind of going over the Japanese culture and how to conduct ourselves, both myself and Doris, we had different roles when you're there. And it was interesting because they have three religions, really. They have Christianity, they have Buddhism, and they have the Shinto religion. And I don't know what the percentages are, but they briefed us on all three of those, which I thought was really interesting, and it really did prepare us to hopefully not embarrass ourselves. We went to Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples, and we didn't go to any cathedrals or anything, but maybe they thought we had that covered. I don't know, but so when you have had, I'll ask Alan this, when you've had opportunities to go beyond just a quick prayer before you put somebody into la-la land. I mean, have you ever run into situations where you've actually developed an ongoing conversation about faith with someone that you met during work?
Well, those conversations were primarily with nurses or CRNAs or other people.
So coworkers more than
mainly,
patients.
Mainly those, and it was just kind of funny to watch the evolution. I started counting myself as I'd hear something, some off-color marker or somebody starting, and I would say, "Oh dear." And after a while, they started calling me Father Mulcahy. Or they would say, "Oh, we can't say that. Dr. Carruth is here."
Yeah, oh dear.
And I would just go, "Wow."
Yeah.
And I really wasn't doing anything except what I thought I was supposed to be doing. But one specific instance.
So just a little course correction on your part.
But I did have a dramatic effect on a dear friend who's a CRNA, and he was having, unbeknownst to me, a situation. And I was on vacation in Cancun with my family, and I got an emergency phone call, and it was him. And he explained to me the situation, and we had been having conversations, and I said, "You get in your car and you drive to that church that you start going to, and you find your preacher, and you have a serious conversation about what's going on." He then signed up after he got through that crisis and saved his marriage, disciple Bible study.
Wow.
And before I knew it, he was praying for his patients.
Oh, super.
And continues to do that. So that was, if you don't give God a chance, it says, how beautiful are those who bring the word of God. And I said, man, God, you have shown me enough times. I am never going to ask again. What am I supposed to be doing?
No kidding. Well, Eddie, let me ask you this. So for people of faith, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for us to influence our company? Again, I guess it's not probably not overtly, but it may be just small ways.
Yeah, I do think it's living. You live that model. I guess you walk the walk.
Just kind of show them,
and then it starts to open doors and questions. And I think like these guys, I've had people at work. Hey, I noticed something on your Facebook. Like, do you really believe all that stuff? And then it opens the door for the conversation, right? And like my wife says, I had a really good friend at work. At Hasbro at that old location. She's like, that person is your God's not dead person, right? Like you're not supposed to try to convince her today. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
But you keep having those conversations every once in a while, and eventually, it whatever you say just leads the path to whatever's supposed to be done. Right?
Yep.
It's not like anything I'm going to do would be the turning point for that person, but you can just kind of lay the groundwork. So I think
planted that seed.
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest piece. When you are that person, people start to
Somebody may approach you out of the blue and just say, I just got a sense, or I know, where you're coming from, right, and I might have this question or have this problem, kind of like Alan described. So one last question. I really probably should have started with this one. So we'll probably each get to take a chance at this, but I'll start with Chuck. And just what role do you think faith should play in the way we do our jobs and, the way we operate within our company?
Well, first and foremost, work like you're working for God. I know I say that like
that's a great way to put it, though.
Yeah, well, and I don't do that always. I wish I did, but I do think about it. And when I'm misbehaving or not doing what for whatever selfish reason I might have, that's what I try to center back on. But I think investing in your colleagues and your customers, if that's Alan, that's your customer, right? But I think treating people, the golden rule, right? And so often that gets noticed because so many people don't do it for whatever reason, and but those people can be transformed too.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of what I think. Living your life like you would want others to live around you. And that will prompt those kind of discussions. And if it doesn't, chances are you may need a little self-examination in how you're treating people and how you're conducting yourself.
Yeah, I can see where that would, you'll know in the back of your mind, if something's awry and doing that. And Eddie, that's kind of the way you just described it too, is that, you just decide, well, I'm going to live this way, and others can take their cues from that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think he even talked about it earlier, where you, like, as a manager, if you're invested in your people, right, then it's so obvious. Like through my career, I've worked for many different style of managers and a lot of different people. And the last manager I just had, she would literally take notes when you talk to her, about your family or whatever. She was writing those things down and would come back and ask those questions. And, so it'd come back and be like, hey, how is your dad? How are things going? Right. Stuff like that. And it stopped taking me by surprise with her.
Yeah.
Like you start to realize how the complete difference and comfort you have with people. And never once did we ever talk about our faith or religion or whatever, but it was just she was a great leader, a great manager. I told her, we just went through a company merger and we got reorged, and I was like, I'd follow her anywhere again. I could work for her anywhere, anytime. She just, and it was just the simple care that she showed me, and the interest.
Well, it really resonates. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So, Alan, what do you think? How should faith operate in the business world?
Well, everybody's been talking about how God has allowed them to see differently. And I think the benefit of having a God-centered life, which, as you said, does not require you to be a biblical scholar and have a Bible around to pump somebody on the head. The best way I describe it is allows you to see outside yourself and to see other people the way God sees them, and your behavior follows suit.
Yeah.
And that's, so
it's really going to lead to the best outcome.
It's just amazing. Like I said, business is business. The world is the world. We understand that not everybody agrees. Not everybody is the same. Not everybody was brought up the same way. Everybody's agendas are not exactly God-centered, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
But we have been told that God cares about everybody. So if I can't see that in them, then I'm going to behave inappropriately. So for me, why should God be in there? It says, because it allows me to see out of myself and be something that I don't have the power to be without that.
Yeah, that's super. Well, that's a great one to close on. A super one to close on.
That's a great answer, too.
Yeah. So, guys, as always, thanks. This conversation has been very thoughtful and illuminating, and can't thank you enough for joining me.
Thank you.
We were grateful to be invited.
All right. So there you have it, episode 19 of Men in Progress. We really hope you've enjoyed the conversation and that you'll join us again in August when our topic will be, where can I find calm in a world of chaos? Thanks again to Alan Carruth, Eddy Evans, and Chuck Moseley for joining me and sharing their wisdom with our listeners. Thanks for listening to Men in Progress from Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church in Flower Mound, Texas. I'm Dave Casey. We'll see you next time.
This episode of the Men in Progress podcast is sponsored by Trietsch Memorial United Methodist Church, where our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're in or near Flower Mound, Texas on any Sunday morning, we would love to welcome you to any of the Trietsch services. Or you can follow our services anytime on our Facebook page or at tmumc.org.